These are the Australian MMA Awards for 2024. To find out who wins, stick around. Ladies and gentlemen, this is your main event. Live from HBF Stadium Festival Hall. Melbourne Pavilion. Not even backstage, we're literally outside. Was that the best fight card in Australian MMA history? Call me crazy, but make sure you call me when I'm right.
Be good if the Aussie MMA Instagram page would give us a bit of glow up because we're killing it.
Welcome to the Australian MMA podcast. My name is Mitchell Tinley and there's another year in the books for the great sport of Australian MMA. A lot of these awards, if you don't know a whole lot about Australian MMA, it's mainly the regional sort of circuit. We've got some next level awards as well, which is people that are in fighters that are in PFL, Bellator, UFC, all that sort of stuff. And then the majority of the awards are the people that you would find are still sort of the regional champions closing out the year of 2024. Now, there's a lot of guys that fall in the cracks. So, for example, last year's 2023 Fighter of the Year, Quillan Sourkield, you actually weirdly don't see appear in these awards because he kind of finished his Australian MMA tenure at the start of the year and then kind of did his Dana White Contender Series situation, then hasn't kind of made his mark yet. Like he will when he fights Anshul Jubilee in February in 2025 in Sydney. He doesn't kind of belong to either category, so he does kind of fall through the gaps. So if you're wondering where a lot of those guys are, it's kind of where they are. Now, kicking it off for the Amateur Fighter of the Year, it goes to Cage Fisher.
Oh, I told you, Cage comes out. Like when he comes and he fights, he's more traditional than his brother Jet. He's more orthodox.
Going to sleep.
Oh!
Tagged him again, the left by Cage.
Oh. Cage Fisher had an amazing 2024, starting his amateur career this year 4-0. That's right, he had 4 fights in 2024. Cage Fisher is just 19, already 4-0. I tell you what, the future is bright for that young man. Submission of the year. Now, with submission, knockouts, and performances, and sometimes it's the flashy, oh no, what did we just see? And sometimes it's the meaning. Now, the meaning is for our runner-up, I've put this in there, Joseph Larsenisi taking on Odin Muscat, really being down heavily on the scorecards, and for him to turn it around and pull out one of the most emotional rear naked choke victories at Eternal MMA 90 on the 29th of November. It was just a beautiful scene.
Oh, Muscat!
He's got the finish. Unbelievable from John
Oh my goodness! From the den! Big, sexy!
But our winner, Luke Daly.
These positions sometimes end up in a... Oh, he's got a twister! He's got it with the twister.
Goodness me, out of nowhere, Luke Daly!
That is right, Luke Daly pulling off a beautiful twister in the Eternal Cage against Jordan Thomas. And for a little cherry on top of the Sunday, listen to his post-fight interview.
I'll say it now and I'll say it again. We're the best team in Australia and we're continuing to prove it. There's 2 things I do well. It's proving people wrong and bashing people. The way I see it is if you're not with us, me and my team, you're against us. And if you're against it, it's pretty simple. Fuck you.
Knockout of the year. Now, as we talk, sometimes it's flash, sometimes it's what it means in the victory. This one, complete switch to the submission of the year. Now, I have honorable mentions from the amateur division of the knockouts of the year. Mario Loga knocking out Daryl Pale.
Hook, overhand, cracks him as he goes for the straight.
And Hunter Wilson. But the knockout of the year for Australian MMA in 2024 goes to... I don't know if you guys like this drum roll or not. Harry Webb against Abdallah Biata.
So he's got that devastating power. Harry's the stunner.
Now, what makes this victory so impressive is it was Harry Webb's sort of first shot at the title. He then claimed the Hex Fight Series lightweight title. He puts Abdallah Biata to sleep, and not just Abdallah Biata, but what has felt like his entire career. That knockout against Abdallah was career-changing. It sort of set off a series of events where he would go on to sort of lose a Muay Thai bout where he looked like he was barely touched and he got knocked out. And then Abdallah would step back in the cage against Michael Barber and catch a knockout there. So you often see that with guys who looks like they've got sort of strong chins until they don't. And Harry Webb is kind of the man that knocked down the door. So for what he did to Abdallah Biata, who was very durable before then, he barely even got knocked down. And so it showed the power that Harry Webb had, and it also showed the star power, because that's what then set this amazing sort of, like we said, series of events in a positive way, where Eternal MMA then threw the kitchen sink at him and he became the first Eternal and Hex champion since Callum Potter in I think 2017 it was. But Harry Webb just sort of proved what an absolute superstar he was. So I have not seen this knockout of the year on anyone else's list, but this is, I truly do think that this was the most important knockout of 2024, and it belongs to none other than the human highlight reel living up to his name, Harry Webb. This now brings us to fight of the year. And look, this one might be a little controversial. Both these boys obviously put in work, and yeah, gonna go against the grain here, and I am gonna pick for fight of the year Thaddeus. Nah, just kidding. It's Kevin Cophamel and Harry Webb.
Bang! There we go. See? He's coming to you. Hey!
The greatest fight, not just of this year, probably a decade. Now, if you don't know anything about these two boys, the whole story leading up to it was what made it so goddamn special. Harry Webb coming off the atrocities that happened to his gym, really tough weight cut as well. He was scheduled to take on David Martinez on 6 hours notice. His opponent falls out, David Martinez, and we'll go into that a little bit later on, but David Martinez misses weight, talked about that earlier, sends it into a whole disarray on UFC weekend. UFC's in Perth. It's a big moment for Harry Webb. So he's got a completely new opponent. Speaking of new opponents, Kevin Cophamel had his opponent Ethan Mitchell fall out leading into the earlier on in the week. Kevin Cophamel gets the call that David Martinez is out. Kevin Cophamel is, technically a featherweight, so he's coming up a weight class, steps into the cage against Harry Webb. Harry Webb coming off the back of all this crazy stuff and the most immense pressure you will ever see put on a human in the history of Australian MMA in recent time. And both boys just delivered. Regardless of the result, who cares? It doesn't matter. This fight will live in infamy. Harry Webb also gets the crowning moment, which he truly deserves, especially throughout all of this shit that happened to him. And no one can take it away from him. He is the Hex lightweight champion and the Eternal lightweight champion. Like I said, the first man to do it since the great Callum Potter, who went on to the UFC as well. So very impressive. But look, there's a whole video I've done on it before, but Harry Webb versus Kevin Cophamel is perhaps our Forrest Griffin, Stephen Bonner type fight. It's that fight you would show anyone to get them interested in Australian MMA. Event of the year, that is right, 2024 Australian MMA Awards, the event of the year. Like I said, it's my list. If you got a problem, you know where to find me. Just tell me when you're going to be there, so I don't have to be there. Look, event of the year, my runner-up, this is my list, like I said. Both these events, I was there in person. You can become a victim of the moment, so I'm aware of that. So once again, do let me know, what was the event of the year for you? The runner-up event of the year for 2024 for me was back in March, Hex Fight Series 29. We had the instant classic, which easily could have been fight of the year if it wasn't for Harry Webb in Jono Mikhailov taking on Alden Bates. It was just an all-round, just fun, well-paced card, but that's the runner-up. The 2024 Australian MMA Event of the Year goes to Eternal MMA 87. That is right. I mean, the one fight alone could do it. August, UFC weekend. UFC was in town. And, look, I mean, Harry Webb versus Kevin Cophamel. And it wasn't even the main event. That is right. There was still Dim Skillies and Seb Saleh, which felt very, it's a niche reference here, but very like WrestleMania 18 for the pro wrestling fans out there, where the biggest match did not even close. Yeah, finishes, fun fights, and of course, an absolute fight of the year. So the award for the 2024 Australian MMA Event of the Year, Eternal MMA 87. That brings us to the promotion of the year. And hey, look, once again, it's my opinion. You can agree or you can fuck off. No, you can agree or you can disagree. I don't care. I will actually chat to you all day about it. Hit me up, AustralianMMA_ on all of your social media channels, and we can debate all day. But Hex Fight Series was doing really well in the start of the year up until about that March, May sort of area, because they had a bit of like change in leadership, and that is always going to shake it up a little bit. And how can you keep momentum when you have sort of change at the helm like that? But look, Eternal MMA, they're number one. They're number one by a bullet. Like I said, I thought it was very competitive early on in the year, whether you agree or disagree. But I feel like Eternal MMA really pulled away. And to see what they did to round out the year, Eternal MMA 90 and 91 back-to-back weekends, the Darcy Vendy, John Martin Fraser event, like it's hard to beat. Beatdown Promotions had their moments. Demolition Fight Series, of course, doing great things. Even the guys in New Zealand, Shuriken and the other ones. Look, it's hard. They're going to be hard to beat. They really are. Eternal MMA, once again, promotion of the year. That brings us to promoter of the year. Like I said, this is my list. I will be able to explain everything. Feel free to reach out to me. We can have phone calls. I don't care. Love chatting about this. Early on in the year, honestly, if momentum kept up, Jacob Watts could have had a good run. The old great Cam O'Neill, and of course Ben Vickers, but he's sort of a little bit hidden. Cam O'Neill out front and centre, but he's a hard man to beat, man. He really is. He's a hard man to beat. So yeah, without a doubt, the winner for promoter of the year is Cam O'Neill. Now, the coach of the year for the 2024 Australian MMA Awards. It's always hard, and it's always about timing when it comes to these awards. But I feel like with the slew of amateurs they've got coming through, they've got a very good female contender on the way up, and they got two boys weeks apart. It's none other than Romel Luestro. He's just done an amazing job. Props to him and props to his team. No one sees kind of all the hard work that he actually does, but big congratulations. The winner of the Breakthrough Fighter of the Year is none other than Marwan Rahiki.
Oh, there it is! Rahiki, the big kibosh! It's good night, Irene!
Freaky Rahiki, one of the most devastating strikers in all of Australian MMA. The Moroccan Sockham, he's from Morocco. He's very good at striking. Training at Lionsden Academy, helping that team be runner-up team of the year. Look, main training partner of George Mangos. I tell you what, the toughest fight for George Mangos out there might just be training every Tuesday. Comeback Fighter of the Year for 2024 for the Australian MMA Awards. Runner-up, Jono Mikhailov out of Combat One, who is now a UFC contract holder. The reason why he's the Comeback Fighter of the Year runner-up is back in March, at what I said, the runner-up event of the year earlier on, Jono Mikhailov took a TKO loss to Alden Bates. And within 6 months, went on to Dana White Contender Series, destroyed Muhammad Aldo, picked up a UFC contract, and now he's probably going to debut in Sydney. If you would have told him When he lost to Alden Bates that night, in a year, you'd be signed to the UFC, making your debut. He'd be like, what do you mean? And he'd probably say, yeah, 100%. He could have been our comeback fighter of the year. He's not. He's a runner-up. Because our 2024 comeback fighter of the year goes to Lachlan Stitt. Now, Lachlan Stitt, the recently retired Eternal MMA welterweight champion. The reason why this was very interesting is last year he was winless in 2023, going down to Peter Templar. He came in as the next big thing, had a shock loss to Peter Templar, had some crazy medical issues and had issues with his spine and looked like he was sort of done then. And for him to sort of recoup, rebound, sort of bounce back and beat Dimitri Petridis and then come back and beat John Varkey, who's probably one of the best fighters not sort of at that next level, to go 5 rounds, out wrestle a man that wrestled in the Commonwealth Games and then finish him with a rear naked choke, the same choke that he lost to a year ago when all of his hype was dashed, to then turn around and be on the other side of it. It genuinely brought like a tear to my eye. That's why when he retired, I was both sad and happy. Sad that we don't get to see him kind of go to the next level, because he definitely can. But happy because I feel like in a way, hopefully, he feels like somewhat like complete. This next award, the next level fighter of the year, is someone who has fought only in sort of PFL, UFC, Bellator. Our next level fighter of the year, female fighter of the year, the winner is of course Sarah Collins.
To the mid-second.
This is deep.
Collins wins in the first round. Sarah Collins.
Now, she beat Leah McCourt and has basically etched herself a fight with Chris Cyborg. Although only going 1-0 for 2024, it's very impressive, Sarah Collins, and I feel like she doesn't get enough love. So our next level fighter of the year is Sarah Collins. Our next level fighter of the year for the males, Jack Della, fighting only once this year, but he stopped the legendary Gilbert Burns, who has fought for the UFC welterweight title. So our next level fighter of the year, Jack Della. Now, Australian MMA female fighter of the year. This fighter goes basically to the Australian that has not fought at the next level, PFL, Bellator, UFC, all that sort of stuff. So it's the fighter that's kind of next in line. It's our holy grail. And the winner of this will be going home with the Australian MMA Fighter of the Year title. If you listen to the audio version, you can't see this, but it's a title. The female Australian MMA Fighter of the Year. The winner of a trophy and a prestigious belt from Pakistan. Jacinta Austin. That's right, Jacinta Austin has won 2 titles, including an Eternal MMA flyweight title against Amina Hedaya, but she's picked up 3 victories this year, and if she is not signed to the UFC to compete in Sydney, her hometown, in February, it feels unjust. If it's not this year, it's next. Jacinta Austin is that good, and she deserves a lot of props. If you don't know who she is, go and find out, because she is the 2024 Australian MMA Female Fighter of the Year. And finally, the Australian MMA Fighter of the Year for the males. Now, second place, runner-up for the Fighter of the Year, the human highlight reel, Harry Webb. That is right. Now, he could have been your number 1. That is fine, but he is my number 2. Because number 1 is none other than George Mangos. That is right, George Mangos, going 3-0 for the year of 2024. It seems like it's all tipped for, he's a Sydney boy, the UFC's in Sydney. It feels like he should get signed. And look, his hardest victory this year was against the pound-for-pound fighter in Australia, number 1 pound-for-pound fighter in Australia, Justin Van Heerden, who held him down a couple rounds, but he eventually beat him by flying triangle. He then dominated his teammate Jarrett Wilbraham in round 2 with another rear naked choke finish. And he finally picked up a knockout victory on his record by absolutely disfiguring Shoichi Tomita. It's been all George Mangos for 2024, and he's done it in just dominant fashion. Like I said, if you would have picked either of those, either way, either side, if you had Harry number 1, George number 2, that's your list. My list, George Mangos number 1. And ironically, and this is another reason to go to australianmma.com.au to check out the article, but I think it was last year, Harry Webb was the 2023 breakthrough fighter of the year, and George Mangos was number 2. So this year, for me, the fighter of the year, the main prize, picking up the shiny new belt and the trophy, George Mangos now number 1, Harry Webb number 2. Now, both these boys are going to be absolute superstars. Everyone on this list going to be an absolute superstar. Hopefully you all enjoyed it. That's a little bit of sort of my reasoning. If you want to jump in the comments and send you death threats, that is fine too. Once again, great for engagement. But yeah, guys, what a year, honestly. I know I've already talked for like an hour, but it really was a hell of a year for Australian MMA. Rivalries and bullshit and all that sort of stuff aside, it is great to be a fan of Australian MMA. This is the final video for 2024. I want to thank each and every one of you if you've ever clicked on a video, liked it, disliked it. Once again, send me death threats. It does not matter. I just love that you love the sport that I love. So stay safe, everyone. Have a happy new year, and I will see you all in 2025 for the craziness that is our sport.
PRP Global and Vex have joined forces, so keep an eye out. Launching mid-November, they've got a new Vex website and new MMA fightwear range releasing shortly. Vex, designed for combat and worn by the best in Australia.